Okay, my printer is broken, so my cheat sheet is going to be on the monitor. I'm going to be looking at it periodically, so in case you wonder why my eyes are rolling. We're going to talk about the death of Sarah Brady. I am not going to lower myself to their level, so I'm not going to be doing anything like that. I'm going to be as professional as I can with this video. Now I have a question. I heard a while ago, I think a guy commented on one of my videos a couple of years ago. I heard that prior to the shooting, Jim Brady was an avid machine gun collector. Prior to May 19th, 1986, you could buy a brand new machine gun in most states for under $1,000 plus $200 for your stamp. And Barry from Iraq Veteran 8888 said a few years ago that he used to convert semi-automatic ARs into full auto M16s for the $200 stamp plus parts and labor. So the shooting was on March 30th, 1981. Now, I cannot confirm that. So if you can confirm that somehow, please tell me how I can confirm that. Now, what is not in doubt is in Christmas of 2000, Sarah Brady bought her adult son a .30-06 rifle. Now, Sarah Brady wants to ban the AR-15. She said it proudly and publicly. But she's buying her son a .30-06 rifle. That's like if my mother wanted to ban beer and she bought me a bottle of 100 proof vodka for Christmas one year. Now, we cannot use .30-06 for defense because after the .30-06 round kills the home invader, it will go through the wall and kill everyone in the next room. To put that into perspective, when Medgar Evers was assassinated by Byron Della Beckwith, Beckwith was hiding across the street in a bushed area, and when Mr. Evers got out of the car, he shot him in the back. The bullet, .30-06 bolt action. The bullet went out his chest into the exterior wall of his house, into the house, and landed in the kitchen. And thank God the family was not in the kitchen at the time. They were elsewhere in the house, and they ran out, and he died in their arms. But, you know, a .30-06 bullet has the power to kill two men standing back to back and paralyze the guy behind them. So that's hypocrisy on her part. Also, she was investigated because it was alleged that she bought the rifle at a gun show in Maryland without papers, and Maryland does not have the gun show loophole. Now, the original purpose of the Brady campaign was simple, and it was actually reasonable. John Hinckley Jr., I can't even say his name on my blood boiling, bought a gun legally, and I forget the exact circumstance, but he was caught carrying it illegally or some stupid shit, and it was taken away, and he paid a fine. He went out and bought another one, and that's the one he used to commit the shooting. Would he have used an illegal gun? Probably. Would he have leapt out of the crowd with a knife? We'll never know. But years ago, 35, 40 years ago, there was no technology. So it literally took 3, 4, 5 weeks to get information from courthouses and from FBI storage rooms, and that took a long time. So a 30-day waiting period 35 years ago wasn't a bad idea because that's how long it took to process everything. And to put that into perspective, the Virginia Tech shooting, and there's a guy that survived Virginia Tech, now works for the Brady campaign. The Virginia Tech shooter, he also should have been banned. But if you look carefully, even today, there's always that one guy that bought a gun legally even though he should not have because he was a fucking psycho or he was on his med, some shit like that. So there were reasonable complaints from the Brady campaign years ago. Since then, it's gone to shit. Perfect example is Elliot Engel, who was the congressman next door to me. He is a life member of the Brady campaign, and he scores a perfect 100 on all of their surveys. He flat out believes in all of it. Accessory bans, magazine bans, limits on how many firearms you can buy in a month or a year rather. He even supports the government stopping you from owning a firearm for no reason. In order for the government to stop you from buying a firearm, they have to prove that you're a felon or a domestic abuser. They have to prove their case against you. He supports the government banning you from owning a firearm without giving a reason. So if the government said tomorrow no one in the Bronx can own a gun, period, he would have no problem with that as long as his bodyguard has a gun. And in 2008, when the Supreme Court passed the Heller decision, prior to 2008 in DC, only the police could have handguns, period. If you had a rifle or shotgun, like the New York City ban, you were not allowed to have any accessories on it, and there were over 200 rifles and shotguns that were banned by name in DC. And if you had a rifle or shotgun that you found somewhere that fit the bill, you had to have it disabled at all times, locked up, disassembled, whatever, and you could not use it for self-defense. The penal code in DC literally said you cannot use a gun for self-defense. The Supreme Court said, no, you have a right to buy a handgun. You have a right to incorporate it into your home defense plan. And as a last resort, you have a right to keep that gun ready and capable of defending yourself in your home as a last resort. He wrote a letter to the Supreme Court that would have gotten you and I thrown in jail for threatening them. Because he wrote a letter that excoriated him. I mean, it was a brutal letter about, oh God, how horrible it is. How dare you allow this and that, real shit. Now, one thing I forgot to put on my list, I'll mention it now. Paul Helmke, who was the Brady campaign's president a few years ago, when Agent Brian Terry was murdered, Paul Helmke wrote a letter to the White House asking the White House to bypass Congress and use executive orders to control the gun dealers in the border states and give the ATF more power over them. Then the gun dealers came out and cooperated with Congress, testified under oath, presented written documentation. What happened was unsavory characters from Mexico came up across the borders, and the gun dealers were told to give them guns. Now, it is a very, very old law enforcement trick to give a person you know shouldn't have one a gun and follow it, or drugs and follow it. Now, when a police officer gives you a gun knowing you're a felon, he has to make sure he follows you and make sure that gun is returned. Whole bunch of guns literally walked across the border. No one was following them. They turned up at crime scenes everywhere, and it was a huge ATF scandal. Eric Holder committed perjury at least twice. He was found in contempt of Congress. The Brady campaign literally said nothing. Okay? Prior to that revelation being made, the Brady campaign wanted the ATF to be the fucking Gestapo for the gun dealers in the Southwest. Once that information became public, you haven't had a word out of them about Fast and Furious. Gotta hit the mouse. My list is gone. I couldn't print out my fucking list, but it's gone. Okay, I got it memorized. Not a big deal. So that was the ATF scandal. Now, the Brady campaign made a documentary on HBO. And the guy that survived Virginia Tech, remember that video about concealed carry doesn't work? And they have a college classroom with students in it, and one student is carrying a fake gun, and he or she has a long sleeve shirt, skin tight, that's really far down on their thighs, and they can't draw. And when the guy pretending to be the shooter comes in, he goes right for them. He's showing that in the documentary. Look. You know, look at how bad this is. You know, he's showing that in the documentary. I'll put that video below. In that documentary, they find, you know, that crazy gun owner? He's like, the bullet comes out here, and this is the trigger, and that's all you need to know. Well, they went to NRA meetings and found that one guy out of 1,000 that was like, all you need to know is this, Okay, we know you need to know more than that. You need to know the 4 basic rules. You need to know basic field stripping. You need to know cleaning. You need to know shoot and don't shoot targets, okay? Target identification, okay? You gotta know a lot more about that than just, point the fucking gun and pull the trigger, Yeah. They found that guy, and videotaped him, and if you want that guy, fuck you. And he's going crazy about, all you need to know is this, And hey, this is the NRA. Oh well. There was an emergency room doctor who went to an NRA meeting, and when he goes to NRA meetings, he leaves his will on the kitchen table in case he's murdered. They literally said this in the documentary. Now, and the documentary was it was almost as if Hitler made a documentary on Judaism. That's how bad it was. That horrible. Now, talking about the stand your ground self-defense laws, George Zimmerman is a piece of shit. Okay, he's always being arrested for domestic violence. He was investigated because he allegedly told a guy, "I'm George Zimmerman and I'll fucking kill you in a dispute." Okay, he is not a hero. I want to make that 100% clear. But when the incident happened, the Brady campaign put a link out. They put an advertisement out about X number of children under the age of 18 were shot in the state of Florida this year. And they didn't specify legal gun, illegal gun, or you know that 15-year-old kid who's 6'2" and attacks a cop with a machete and gets shot. They didn't specify guilty or innocent. They just said X number of people under the age of 17 were shot in the state of Florida this year. Well, in the city of Chicago, not the state of Illinois, the city of Chicago, that amount of underage children are shot every single month, if not more. But the Brady campaign doesn't mention that because Chicago had the laws they want for the entire United States until in 2010 the Supreme Court again said in Chicago v. McDonald v. Chicago, you have the right to own a handgun, and the state of Illinois forced the city of Chicago to allow concealed carry. Prior to that, Chicago had the same exact laws the Brady campaign wants nationwide. The Brady campaign also does their list. They rank all the states on how good their common sense gun laws are. Arizona scores a 0, California scores an 80. And it's how big is the magazine ban? Are you allowed accessories on your rifle? Is it shall issue or may issue? Are you allowed to bring a gun to the bar? Are all guns registered? Do you need a license to buy a gun? And it doesn't factor in violence or gun crime. It just factors in how hard it is for a citizen to get a gun. So California gets an 80, Arizona gets a 0. Even though you're far more likely to be murdered in California than Arizona. Even with the problem at the border, that's still true. And now, the stand your ground law thing in Florida, self-defense means I defend myself from an attack. Castle doctrine means if I'm on my property and I'm attacked, I can retreat and should retreat, but I don't have to if I don't want to. Stand your ground means you can defend yourself without retreating as long as you are where you are legally allowed to be. It could be on the street corner, it could be in your car, it could be in a supermarket. As long as you are legally allowed to be where you are, that's stand your ground. Now, The Brady campaign told people in several cities, New York City and Chicago are among them, but several others, don't go to Florida for your next vacation because you might get shot. Think about that for a minute. You're telling people in Chicago that if they go to Florida, they might get shot. I'm not making this up. Now, they also went down to Florida and had handed out flyers, and they had a billboard on the highway in Florida warning visitors to Florida, don't argue. They might stand their ground. You might get shot if you argue. Shh. Don't start anything you can't finish because they might kill you legally over here. Here's the problem with that. Self-defense does not protect you from arguments or mutual fights. So, if I'm in a bar and I call a woman a cunt and her boyfriend pushes me and then I push him and then we go outside in the alley and duke it out, that's not self-defense. That's fighting. Okay? If you're having an argument with your neighbor, you're at the fence, you're your neighbor arguing, and you're arguing over the stupidest shit in the world, and you decide to shoot each other over it, that's not self-defense. Self-defense legally means someone attacked you for no reason and you protected yourself. No arguments, you literally did nothing wrong. And that's why I always say, walk away if you can, keep your mouth shut if you can, don't go out to the alley if you can. Okay, that's why I say, don't do anything stupid, because if violence occurs during the investigation, they're going to want to know everything you did wrong. You can look this up in the penal code, you can call a lawyer and ask them. But the Brady campaign would just prefer to fearmonger the shit out of you. So, the Brady campaign wants you to believe that if you start an argument with a Floridian or a Texan, whatever the fuck they are, they can legally kill you. Or they can legally shoot you. No, it's not an argument, it's an assault. Now, in England, they have no such law. Like the Brady campaign wants over here. And what happened in England? The guy was in this house, he has no neighbors around, two guys come in armed, corner him, tell him they're going to beat him to death, he shoots them, one dies, one lives, he's charged with murder, reduced to manslaughter, he's sent to prison. And the guy that lived ended up suing him. Okay? That's what the Brady campaign wants here. But by telling you that self-defense law is bad, self-defense gives the guy the right to shoot you over an argument. They coined the terms assault clip, assault weapon. All of that was created by them, excoriated by them, actually. Exploited by them is the word I'm looking for. Got a sore throat now. Here's the problem. Jim Brady was a turnip for most of these years. Okay? And his wife, she was fighting cancer here and there. She did other things. But the Brady campaign has their name on it. If they're not involved in it, if the other Brady campaign members that took over were creating these problems and not them, why didn't they speak out? Why didn't Sarah Brady say, wait a minute, we just want to strengthen background checks so that the next generation can't get a gun. We're not trying to attack innocent citizens. Why didn't Sarah Brady come out and say, listen, you have the right to protect yourself. I don't want to take that away from you. Why didn't Sarah Brady come out and condemn all this bullshit about going to Florida and scaring people? If you had an organization called the Vinnie Foundation to prevent gun violence, and you, in my name, you were spreading propaganda and fear, I would shut you up. I would fire you, or I would condemn you, or I would sue you to change the name from the Vinnie Foundation to the You Foundation. That's what it is. They ended up having a good idea to start with many years ago. Let's purify the background checks to make sure the next thing doesn't get a gun. Very good. very honest. Even conservatives supported that concept. But then they turned it into a, let's attack the Second Amendment, let's demonize gun owners. Okay? And Sarah Brady, in the end, she did more to help convicted felons and more to help violent people than any other person in the past 25 or 30 years. The Brady campaign never once spoke out in favor of any gun law, period. They never once spoke out in favor of any legal gun owner, period. And they always went out of their way to demonize everyone before the facts came out. So they had a good concept to begin with a long time ago, and they fucked it up. They did. They really did. They paved the way for mayors against legal guns. They paved the way for Shannon Watts. They paved the way for all this shit we see now. And they could have stopped. Anytime they could have stopped it. I have to get the phone now. I think that's about it. Thank you.